Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. We've seen a flurry of open letters to the government from green groups demanding a green, resilient recovery and massive investments in green, wind, solar, biomass, geothermal, electric cars. And this week, a group of environmental charities is calling for a new climate accountability law. They want the federal government to enshrine the Paris Agreement targets in law because they say Canada has not attained its greenhouse gas reduction targets for the past 30 years. They think passing a law will make that happen. But what's the reality? Canada already has hundreds of laws on GHG reduction. And the fact is, there's no market-ready technology that can replace oil, natural gas, and coal. Making a law won't change that. And here's why. In this report by Robert Lyman, Ottawa energy consultant with more than 40 years' experience on the GHG file, he notes that Canada already has more than 600 different GHG reduction laws, regulations, or incentives across federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government. In this report, the 85 million ton obsession on efforts to reduce passenger vehicles use, Lyman states that after 5 decades of government efforts to discourage commuting by personal vehicle, the percentage of working Canadians commuting by car has fallen from 80.7 to 79.5%. In other words, regardless of what government planners, transit commissions, and environmentalists may prefer, the average citizen is voting for personal vehicles. Lyman also shows that prior to the April 2020 carbon tax hike, Canadians were already paying a carbon tax equivalent of $192 a ton just on fuel taxes alone. Fuel taxes are a form of carbon tax, but at least that money, for the most part, is used for public benefit like road maintenance and infrastructure. Carbon taxes per se, they become a government slush fund for green cronies. So despite these oppressive taxes, the consumption of gasoline has barely dropped because Canadians live in a vast, cold, sparsely populated country. We're not like tiny Denmark, Norway, Sweden, or the UK. What these climate activists fail to mention is that although Canada has not met its targets for the past 30 years, our emissions have pretty much flatlined. Canada's population in 1990 was 27 million. Today, it's 37 million. So despite a 37% increase in population who need goods, services, transportation, and housing, GHG emissions remained about the same. So obviously, we are more efficient in the use of energy. But why can't we meet targets? Shouldn't we just add more wind and solar? Wouldn't a Green New Deal lead to a resilient economic recovery after COVID-19? And wouldn't making a new law demanding climate accountability and net zero targets, wouldn't that make those targets attainable? The short answer is no. And here's why. Robert Lyman has recently produced a series of 3 reports explaining why a green recovery won't be resilient at all. In fact, it will be economically destructive. In Broken Promises, Lyman explains that despite heavy investments in wind and solar, global emissions have increased. He writes that from 2006 to 2017, nearly $2.5 trillion was funneled into government-mandated renewable energy investments. Yet, despite that monumental expense, global emissions increased by almost 20%. As the global economy emerges from the current pandemic, logic would suggest that oil and gas, which now constitutes 60% of global energy use, will grow far faster than renewables, which only hold about a 4% share. Rather like Michael Moore's now famous movie Planet of the Humans, Broken Promises exposes the many myths and lies about renewable energy. Robert also identifies 24 generic ways in which governments provide advantages to wind, solar, and biomass industries that are not available to competing conventional energy suppliers, meaning that renewables get special treatment, that taxpayers subsidize for no benefit to consumers. Most important of all, renewables do not stop climate change, nor can they replace the use of oil, natural gas, and coal. There's just no suitable technology. So the second part of this series is called Empty Wallets, wherein Robert Lyman exposes and explores the issue of subsidies to wind and solar. It's not free energy, far from it. Lyman finds that from 2010 to 2019, total U.S. federal government subsidies for wind were $36.8 billion, and for solar energy were $34.4 billion. That means that the subsidies were $82.46 U.S. per megawatt hour for solar and $18.86 U.S. per megawatt hour for wind per unit of electricity generated. And what about biofuels? Well, if commercial scale plant were available, cellulosic biofuels would sell at $35 US per gallon. That's more than 10 times the price of gasoline in the US today. And as for biomass-fueled electricity generation plant, that emits 50 to 85% more carbon dioxide than a coal plant and 300% of a natural gas-fired plant. And Robert's third report, Empty Pockets, shows that clean tech is not a growth industry in Canada, and it's a tiny, low-performing segment of our economy. Green climate recovery activists claim huge numbers of jobs will be created by green energy, but studies in Spain, Italy, Germany, Denmark, and the United Kingdom all found that for every job created in the renewable energy sector, 2 to 3 jobs were lost in energy-consuming sectors of the economy. Groups like Greenpeace, World Wild Fund, Pembina Institute, and David Suzuki Foundation had assured the public in Ontario that the Green Energy Act would be a lower-cost transition. But energy prices skyrocketed. More than 75,000 jobs were lost. And most of the same groups that foisted the disastrous Green Energy Act on Ontario, that cost billions and billions of dollars. Those are the same ones now pushing for the climate accountability law for Canada to impose similar measures on the whole country. So the climate accountability law advocates are pushing broken promises, empty wallets, and empty pockets on you, while demanding a new law to force Canadians to meet Paris Agreement's unattainable targets. The Paris Agreement is entirely voluntary. The United States, our largest trading partner, pulled out of it because it saw the impending economic devastation and job loss for its economy, which China, the world's largest emitter, is not obligated to honor. And Bjorn Lomborg reports that even if all the countries met their Paris targets, global warming would only be reduced by 0.05 degrees Celsius by 2100. But trying to achieve this would cost trillions of dollars for no practical public benefit. So we don't need another climate accountability law, but we do need climate accountability from these environmental groups that are greenwashing the public. The Competition Bureau of Canada has a number of laws about making false claims on environmental products. In light of the facts from Robert Lyman's reports, obviously you're being greenwashed, Canada, and somebody should call these environmental groups to account. Before making environmental claims, you have to make sure that the claims are not misleading, that they're accurate and specific. So it's misleading to claim that wind is free. It's not environmentally beneficial or benign or clean. When wind turbine blades are being buried in landfills because there's no way to recycle them, and solar panels can't effectively be recycled, that's not clean. Clearly, Lyman's factual reports debunk all the greenwashing of these environmental groups. And what about their climate claims? Well, Most emergency or crisis climate predictions are based on a series of computer simulations that were never meant to be used to forecast the future. But dozens of scientists have improperly used them to support their scary claims. So, in addition to Robert Lyman's energy reports on the pitfalls of green energy, read our reports deconstructing those catastrophic climate prophecies. When climate prophecy fails, and our most recent release, rebutting Dr. Catherine Hayhoe's report on Alberta's climate future, we called it Facts versus Fortune-Telling. So you can help us stop the greenwashing gravy train that's chewing up your tax dollars. Donate or become a member of Friends of Science Society, or just share our stuff. Let's get the facts out there. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling.